Hey, I hope you stick around today. I've got someone here, an icon in network security. Very excited to talk to him. And as you know, this is my personal passion. I love this area so much. So stick around. We're going to talk a little bit about the technology, past, present, future. And if you work in enterprise, or if you work in an ISP and government, and networks and packets and flows and things are relevant to your day-to-day life, I think you're going to enjoy this. So I hope you stick around. Hi, everyone. This is Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber. I want to welcome you to our discussion today. I have an icon in network security, Greg Bell, who I know a lot of you probably know. He's with Corelights, one of the co-founders, and currently serves as the Chief Strategy Officer. I asked Greg to join us. We're going to talk about kind of past, present, future in an area that I think anybody who does this would have to agree is not just foundational, but has become pretty strategic too. Supporting zero trust and all the things that we care about in enterprise and in generally in cybersecurity in general. So, Greg, welcome to the discussion, and thank you so much for making time. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Ed. It's my pleasure. It's good to be here.
Greg, I think most people in this community know your company, but maybe for those who don't, just a couple words about Corelight and how you came to be, and then we can get into our discussion.
Yeah, sure. Happy to explain. Corelight is I'm happy to say it's the fastest growing company in the NDR category, network detection and response. We help customers increase their visibility, especially as they adopt new architectures and expand their detection coverage, make investigations go faster. And I think another thing that's important to know is that we're an open source company and specifically open core company. So we developed and created the software that we're commercializing. And in general, we look to design patterns that elite defenders have deployed, and we try to bring those design patterns to the enterprise, to a broader segment of the market. And we can also, especially at this time, a lot of folks are thinking about operational costs. We can help consolidate legacy platforms and reduce TCO for our customers. So that's Corelight in a nutshell.
Take me back, because I was there as you guys were beginning, and let's go back to the early days when you guys were providing open source, and a lot of us were part of that community, Zeke and Bro and that whole compendium of tools. What were things like in the early days, and what prompted you to get started, building the company?
Yeah, great question. And I wasn't, this is my first startup actually. I spent most of my career in federal service and I was a network operator. In fact, I like to say I had the best job in networking. I managed the mission network for the US Department of Energy, which had this amazing mission of accelerating scientific discovery. The software that we're commercializing was invented in that environment, just uphill from me in Berkeley, by my co-founder, Vern Paxson. And the company began with this modest goal of just serving as a business model for open source, as it was called Bro at the time, now called Zeek. We had no professional salespeople, no Salesforce, no marketing, not much of a website. It was just driven by inbound demand. Over time, all that changed, but that was really the essence of the company. No venture funding either, just scrappy, bootstrapped small business.
How did you meet Vern? Did you guys just you've been working together and said, hey, let's go do something together?
Yeah, I knew him as this towering figure in network research who had written all these seminal articles and RFCs. And I was just a lowly network engineer. Eventually, I worked my way up into the job that I described and noticed, he became a friend and noticed that this software was losing, as naturally happens over time, federal investment and federal funding. And there was a real problem here and a real commercial opportunity. So that's kind of how the germ of the company. And that was 7 or 8 years ago.
A lot of people, when they think about open source and then think about companies that provide either value add or wrap around the open source, they often think about the support and other types of things as being one of the key differentiators. Was that the idea that you'd try to maybe fill in the blanks or where?
Yeah, that was the original. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Was that what you were thinking?
Yeah, that was indeed the original idea, and that allowed us to hire a few people and to get started, service contracts. That's the way, a lot of open source companies get started. Over time, we found the model wasn't really scalable. We couldn't grow rapidly, and it wasn't it was a little riskier than we liked. And so we transitioned into the model of selling products, not services. And that was a better road for us. It also introduced us to venture funders, and it sort of changed the course of the company. And now, although we have a professional services arm, we don't offer support around Zeek or Suricata. We offer products that implement those technologies as excellently as we can.
It's funny, that investment community really does prefer a product as opposed to service. And I guess there's a reason. Makes for something that you can scale a
Yeah,
little.
I mean, I think some of your viewers might know it has to do with scalability, with the valuation multiples, with the way Wall Street rewards companies as well, with the notion of the ultimate TAM for the company, the market. But for us also, it was just a way to impact the world. We're very mission oriented. We believe in collective communal defense. We believe in open standards and open protocols. Um, we think they give defenders the edge. And so we really were able to greatly increase the impact of the company by becoming a products company and not focusing on a relatively small number of customers we could help through the services channel.
When people were first deploying this, and by the way, nobody called it NDR then. We've all watched
Right.
that. You guys have been around longer than NDR. But where
That's
were
right.
people putting these, and what's been sort of the evolution of, at least architecturally, where your solution sits? Because in the early days, you'd put it at perimeter, but I would
Yeah.
imagine that now there's a much more expansive set of opportunities to use the product. What's been that journey?
Yeah, I often, if I'm at a party or something describing what the company does, I compare what we do to security cameras for the network. And the perimeter deployment is the classic sort of north-south deployment point. It's like putting a security camera on the front door of a bank. But over time, we find our customers do want deeper visibility throughout their network. However, that's defined, right? In our careers, the notion of networking has evolved so radically. And that might mean security cameras within the Kubernetes environment or a cloud environment, or embedded in a zero trust solution, or in a utility substation. So yeah, we're seeing more and more points of visibility being engineered in. And of course, lots of other changes too, architecturally, encryption, the rise of zero trust, the rise of hybrid multi-cloud architectures. And so we're working to build solutions that make sure that network traffic analysis, or NDR, is highly relevant as all these architectures evolve.
Capacity's been a big change over the past decade or so. And I'm
Yeah,
curious, not that long ago, megabits per second seemed like a lot.
yeah.
And now that's really nothing. Gig and even terabit per second are not uncommon, certainly in a carrier environment. What's been your approach there? Do you distribute, or do you have bigger boxes, or just use algorithms? How do you deal with um, this, I think, very welcome, improvement in the capacity and size of networks everywhere?
Yeah, for me, the exponential growth of network traffic at the internet core has been a defining force in my career. Because at LBNL, when I ran the mission network for DOE, we were always at the bleeding edge of network deployment speed to support, data acquisition at accelerators and for supercomputers. And so, in a sense, the company honestly has always been a little bit maybe too far ahead than it needed to be in terms of scalability, because we were always imagining customers just like ourselves in our national lab environment. But it has proven to be really useful to be able to scale Zeek up to 100 gig and way beyond in ways that I think most open source users are really shocked that we've been able to do. And yeah, it's what in computational science they might call an embarrassingly parallel application. We just scale by adding more cores, packet brokers, but we do that in a pretty impressive power and space footprint. And so we have deployments at nation state scale, almost at a terabit per second, and we could go bigger if we wanted. So that I think we've solved that problem a little bit to my amazement if I would have thought back 8 years.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, as the networks have
Yeah.
grown, you definitely have the opportunity to leverage the same types of technologies they're using to grow as to monitor. Now, what's been the role of encryption in either making this more difficult or just demanding that you be a little bit more clever about interpreting the data you collect? Because a lot of people, I come from AT&T, and I know that
Uh,
that was always an issue in determining the fidelity what we could pull from a typical network. What's been your observation over the years with that challenge?
Well, yeah, it's been, as you know, it's been such a profound change. When I got started in networking, you could tap into the core of any network, and there'd be a lot of telnet and clear text protocols, and you could, as a someone who was debugging or understanding networks or defending them, you could really see everything that was going on. You could see the attackers talking to each other in IRC chat channels, right? And the rising tide of encryption. And by the way, not all traffic is encrypted, and I
Right.
think it seems like we've reached sort of a plateau. My co-founder Vern has a lot of data on this, but traffic is substantially encrypted. So, and that's great for the world. It's great for privacy, right? It's great for many of the things we care about in civil society, and we support encryption at Corelight. Basically, our customers, some of them, by law and policy, have the ability to break and decrypt, and in that case, we integrate with those architectures, and we can get fantastic network visibility, just like the internet of 2001. But in the case that isn't possible, Vern, who leads our R&D team now as our chief scientist, his team has poured a lot of effort into the very clever, as you said, clever analysis of encrypted traffic streams. We look at interpacket arrival times and patterns in those times and correlations between one encrypted stream and another to make inferences about what's happening in the stream without breaking it, without decrypting it. And there's an amazing amount that we can extract also from the metadata related to SSL and other encrypted protocols. We can try to figure out, is there a human being typing in that stream? Is there an automated script running? Is data being transferred? Has there been an attack against credentials? And you can put all these little signals together into a heuristic that tells you something about what's happening. And that's the approach we take when we can't decrypt. And I think that's it's worked out pretty well for us. It's a feature set that our customers really appreciate.
Now, in terms of your analytic capability today and kind of moving forward, because that's what we're all talking about now, is
Yeah.
advances in heuristics using AI and other kinds of things. What do you see as the trends there today and moving forward in the ability to interpret and generate some actionable recommendation based on flow traffic and interpretation of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we have I would say, an analytical philosophy that is all tools, and use the best for the job at hand. And we've applied ML techniques for quite a number of years, and they can be extremely fruitful. We've witnessed, and you've lived through too, and everyone watching this, an amazing sea change in everyone's thinking about the application of AI to security, right, in the last 6 months or so. People are no longer talking as much about using AI to detect badness. And in fact, AI is not such a good tool for detecting badness in a generic sense, because the most sophisticated attackers are creative, right? They're used to breaking patterns and to deviating from patterns. And of course, you train AI models on data sets that are in fact patterns. So that's always been a challenge in the application of AI to cyber defense. But now the emergence of compelling large language models mean we can think about AI differently, as a set of tools that can sort of assist human operators and up everyone's game. We announced an integration with GPT-4 at RSA, an integration with Investigator, our new SaaS platform. And that's been super exciting. A lot of our customers are really interested in it. And it's in that co-pilot model of the large language model, answering questions, explaining maybe how a rule works, taking a relatively small data set and bringing the analyst's eyes to the relevant part of it, explaining what a CVE means. It's a whole suite of relatively narrow but really powerful use cases that together add up to this different experience for the analyst. And we're super interested in that. Our friends at Mandiant have blogged about this recently. They listed a number of really interesting use cases, and I think we're all learning and experimenting, but we're all in on this.
That's fantastic. I want to go back to architecture for a minute because we all grew up with a traditional perimeter architecture. And, most companies still have to some degree hybrid. I think in the federal government, it's still more than hybrid. Civilian agencies are
Yeah.
still mostly sitting behind perimeters and will be for some time. But to the degree that companies have grown these zero trust, almost like a secure edge networks, SASE being one example model that comes up, I've often thought that for your product, you guys look like an awful nice edge product to me. It seems
Yeah.
like it could be exponential growth in usage and rev. You should almost become a canonical part of that secure edge. Are you guys thinking about that? Like moving forward, that would seem to almost be a requirement that ought to be there as I build out an edge, say for a branch office or for a data center or for cloud or for even for remote use. What's your thinking there? Is that
Yeah,
something?
I mean, I'm grateful to hear you say that because it definitely reflects our thinking. There was a moment in the zero trust hype curve where I think that was forgotten. And the belief was that zero trust would solve all ills. But of course, there's never going to be a silver bullet for security problems. And we are now seeing the emergence of a new conventional wisdom that network visibility needs to be inserted into zero trust architectures for a number of reasons. For the classic applications of network visibility, but also for verification that the architecture is in fact performing as intended. And there are new standards coming out of the federal space that really emphasize this point. And I think the SASE and zero trust providers are beginning to understand um, that network visibility can enhance what they're offering. We participated in an announcement at RSA from Palo Alto Networks, and it described an integration with their Prisma Access SASE service. And that's the sort of, that was really, I will say, customer driven by a customer a little bit chagrined at losing network visibility when they migrated to SASE. And I think if we develop integrations with SASE and other zero trust providers, we can help achieve both ends, zero trust benefits without losing the network visibility benefits that we're well known for. And I think that's the future.
I have a prediction that I think you're going to make more money from that cloud computing model than you ever did with Perimeter. That we'll see in 5 years. We'll come back and see if my prediction's right, but I think that's going to be a good
I think
year.
you might be right, Ed. Let's put it on the calendar and revisit this because a few years ago, folks were thinking network visibility was less important. Now the opposite is true. There's a concern about the limits of EDR. What about endpoints that are unmanaged or unmanageable? What about IoT devices? What about attackers skilled in evading EDR controls? And so we're back in a sort of more balanced perspective around security, around the data sources available, and NDR is a really important part of the present and the future.
I love what you guys are doing. I'll be perfectly honest. I worry sometimes that that NDR moniker gets misused across the marketplace. You probably see that, like
Yeah,
this letter and then DR put after it, EDR, MDR, NDR, XDR. It's like I think it creates a lot of confusion. But you guys have a wonderful product. I hope that people will take the time. Gosh, anything that I forgot to ask you that we should have covered? We covered a little bit of the past, a little bit about what you guys are doing. I'll peek into kind of how you guys will grow into the future. But anything we maybe haven't covered?
I might just reemphasize the open source dimension of what we do because I think it's a great learning platform for defenders as they advance and mature their careers. It doesn't tie you to specific proprietary vendor formats or content. You can go to SANS and learn, or you can go we are the custodians of the Zeek project. You can go to zeek.org and sign up and join the Slack and participate. And it's just, even if you don't become a Corelight customer, it's a great way to join our community and to upskill yourself. And there are other similar products, Suricata, Sigma,
Nice.
many others. But I'll put a pitch for advancing your career through open source. And of course, please visit the Corelight website. We're an open core company in this space, and we'd love to talk with you and learn from you.
I hope people visit your site and I hope they barrage you on LinkedIn
You
and
please
it's
do.
always a pleasure to chat with you. You always have a very good perspective on such an important part of our industry.
Thanks, Ed. I greatly appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for joining us. And for those of you watching, we'll see you all next time.